Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind Your Mission, a podcast for Christian women looking to be encouraged and uplifted as we look into God's Word on what He says is good and how He outlines is best for us to live. Liz and I are busy in life right now. There's a lot going on, but we are just thankful that you've joined into this podcast and that you've continued to support us along the way. Liz, do you want to say anything before I kind of respond to your and Cameron's episode? I wasn't obviously there for your episode last week, but it was so good, and I have thoughts that I'm excited to share today.
Yeah, that episode was so much fun to film with Cameron. She's a sweet friend I've met while I've been here in Virginia Beach, and I just love her story, and I just want to thank her so much, even though she's not here, for sharing and being vulnerable and for sharing her and her mom's story. So that was super good.
Yeah, I had no idea that that was going to be the topic. Like, I knew you were going to do an episode with Cameron, obviously, and I was excited to hear it regardless because I've heard bits and pieces of who Cameron is, but I haven't met her myself, and I didn't know that side of her story. And I thought it was really encouraging to share something that, like you talked about on the episode, needs to be shared. That perspective specifically is one that's going to be super powerful, I think, for people to hear. And just the abortion topic in general, obviously in politics it's controversial, but as Christians, like that, it should not be a controversial issue. It is not a controversial issue. God creates life, He ordains life, and we, as image bearers of Christ, should be the frontline supporters of life. So I think I wanted just to kind of go back to when I really realized that the abortion fight was one worth fighting. And I, like many people, probably started paying attention to politics the most after 2020, after COVID. I was 20 years old in COVID. And so I feel like that point in college, you're kind of starting to realize that that politics are important, that there's important pieces that we should be aware of when it comes to the world around us, our country specifically. And so I started paying attention more. That's also the same time when I became a Christian. And then I think just through the people that I was listening to, whether it be Allie B. Stuckey or Lila Rose, they all really champion the abortion issue and are just frontline people who are speaking out about that, along with things like IVF and everything. And I think also having my own son, I think firsthand I've experienced the miracle of life and recognized that even if you don't necessarily feel kicking or a baby bump in the first trimester or up until a certain point, a baby so quickly goes from a tiny mustard seed to what my son is now, a walking, talking, hilarious toddler. And I think having that happen in my own body just made me really internalize the miracle that it is and the importance of it is to protect that life and to speak out for those babies who don't have a voice and who can't fight for themselves. And just overall, Liz and I on this podcast want to speak out on truth. We want to dive into what truth is. We want to ask the question, where are we getting our truth from? Because the answer should be the Word of God. And in the Word of God, it is very clear that every life is worthy of love, protection, and that God, again, ordained every single life. And so, like I mentioned, if you either don't really have a strong position on this argument or are just now realizing that you should be more equipped with either knowledge or just some information on this topic to be able to share with others, highly recommend, like I mentioned, just go to Allie B. Stuckey's podcast, Relatable, and just search like abortion, and she'll have tons of episodes to talk about it. Also, Lila Rose, like I mentioned, she's the founder of Live Action, which is a huge movement that talks about this. And then I also have really enjoyed and learned a lot from watching debates actually on the abortion topic. So like Jubilee, if you go on YouTube and watch any Jubilee debates. Yeah, I learned so much about a lot of different topics from Jubilee, but I enjoy debates because you witness and hear arguments that the other side genuinely has, and that you'll probably encounter if you have these kind of conversations with people in your daily life as well. And so those really help. And then I also recently have started, and this is actually really funny because of all the tariffs. Like I've already started like buying American from American brands specifically, but I also, it's less about the American. I mean, I am so pro America. Hope that's pretty clear. But for me, I just want to support companies that support my values. And so even though right now I don't have a lot of free time in my own life to go and volunteer at pregnancy centers or anything like that, what I do have the ability to do is buy Every Life diapers and like support. I buy my vitamins from We Heart Nutrition, and all those companies like give 10% of their funds to pregnancy centers. And another organization that we've started supporting is Preborn. And Preborn, if you listen to any of the people that Liz and I listen to, I'm sure you've heard ads for all these things before. 7 Weeks Coffee, like all these things. And I before just heard them as ads, but then I've started looking into them myself and actually realized that they're worth supporting. And Preborn is one that just pays for women to have ultrasounds because, like I mentioned, when I witnessed that life growing inside me, that it has, from a super young gestational age, a baby has arms and legs and hands, and it's moving, and it is clearly life when you see it on an ultrasound. So I just want to kind of highlight some of these resources that I've dove into and some of the places where I've been able to support this movement, if you were interested. So I'll link some of these down below in the description of this podcast if you're interested. But then I also just wanted to pivot, and this, I think, ties into a lot of different areas of our life, but I wanted just to briefly talk about God's sovereignty and just how much more He knows than we do. I, this weekend, am able to give my testimony at a Officers Christian Fellowship fundraising event. They asked us just to share what OCF has done in our lives, and the story that I'm going to tell is one that I have told, I think, on the podcast before, but I always go back to it because it was seriously a pivotal moment in my life. But it's the story of when I was backpacking in Colorado, and we were on a 3-day trek up one of the 14,000-foot mountains. On the third day, we were summiting, so we were headed to the top of the mountain, and we left the high base camp at 3 a.m. because we wanted to get to the top before sunrise, and so we had to leave super early. And so on the trek, it was pitch black, and all we had were our headlamps to light the single step in front of us. We couldn't see more than just one step ahead of us as we walked in a single file line. And that summer, I was really dwelling on the question of what I wanted to do with my life, with my career. Like, it was the summer before my senior year at the academy, and so I was really just wrestling with, okay, what do I want to pursue for my career path and all that. And when we reached the top of the mountain that morning, and the sun is starting to rise over the horizon, and I'm looking back at the beautiful view, the trail we just walked up, and like, oh, I can see things now. I realized that life isn't necessarily about what we do, what we pursue, what career path, like all that. And it's more so about who we're doing life with in two ways. In the first way, obviously, we should be walking throughout life yoked to the Lord. And just like that one headlamp was lighting my step, I should let the Lord direct the single step in front of me instead of trying to plan out a billion steps down the line, trying to put the whole puzzle together because I don't know what's going to happen. Only the Lord does. And so when it comes to like the abortion issue and my own story, like Weston, our son, was a surprise. We didn't necessarily plan to have him as early as we did, but by trusting that was a God-ordained child that was growing inside me, Weston has changed my life. The whole trajectory of my career, my whole motivation for some of the things I do, including this podcast, come from the fact that Weston, my son, the disruption of it. And people think that having a child is disrupting your life, and it is, but for me, it was in the best way possible. I needed I needed someone to come in and uh, change my life in a radical way to get me focused not on myself but on others. And I get that it's disruptive, but I think that it's supposed to be, and that God will use it for our good, just like He can everything that we see as a hindrance. He can use for our good and His glory. So I realized that obviously I should trust the Lord as a light unto my path. But then I also, on that trip, realized as we were walking in a single file line that we're not on this journey alone. I had people in front of me and behind me supporting and encouraging me along the way. And same with in real life. We have people who have gone before us. We have mentors and our parents, grandparents. We have people who have gone before us who can encourage and support us and teach us. And we also have people coming up behind us that we get to pour into, that we can share with, and that help us to reflect on our own journeys. And we also, luckily, we're not walking through life in a single file line. We have people alongside us too in the same season. Like Liz and I are in similar seasons, and a lot of my friends are in the parenting season, and we're not in this alone. And so when it comes to just big disruptions, whether it be an unplanned pregnancy or a career change or health issues, we have the Lord to light our path and to direct our steps, and we have those around us to support us and encourage us. And I just wanted to remind you all of that. Liz and I don't have too much to share today because it's just been a busy time, and as we get into spring, we're just we're we're living real life like all of you are, but we just wanted to remind you of that today. And yeah, I just wanted to share those resources with you as well because they've been super encouraging to me.
Thanks for sharing all the resources. And I like that you brought up that analogy because I actually heard a similar one this week. I was leading a high school girls' Bible study. So this is like from a high school girl, but she was like, yeah, following God is kind of like following a GPS map. Like you never know. You don't know the whole route when you're following like your Apple Maps or whatever, but you have just enough information to like make the next turn. And that's kind of like what it is with God. Like we have enough information to make the next turn, but we don't know how everything's going to play out. And we don't know like what's next. And I kind of felt this also. I wanted to talk about, it kind of goes into what you're talking about. I was at TAPS course a couple weeks ago, which I don't even know what that stands for, to be honest, but it's basically like the military's crash course on how to transition out of active duty. And Erin and I have a couple years left before we plan on getting out, but I took it while I was on limited duty because of my hip. So I was like, I'm just going to get this over with because I know I have to do it. And it was interesting. It was very practical, talked about like resume and VA benefits and job hunting and all that. But it kind of annoyed me a little bit, but because I'm grateful for the help and the guidance that they give. But I feel like they were like, you have to have this career, you have to know what you're doing. You have to have like this, but budgeting's good and all that, but it's like you have to work. Like you can't live in this economy if you don't work, was kind of like the feeling I got from it. And there was a few girls in the class who were like, yeah, I'm just gonna get out and be a stay-at-home mom. It almost felt as if that was like a lesser thing. And people are like, oh, at work and stuff. They're like, oh, what are you going to do when you get out? And it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm following God to the next thing, kind of like what you were saying. And I don't know what my life is going to look like completely, but I know I feel called to take this step and then I'll see what the Lord does in the next season of life. So we're just following the next turn on the GPS map because He's just lighting our steps like you were talking about. And I know you feel this too. In the military workplace, it just feels like it's undervalued. I've had people tell me like, "Oh, you can make it work, like you can do both." And it's like, "Oh, I don't want to do both, and I don't think I can do both very well." So, something has to give. And they're always wondering why there's like I'm kind of rambling here about all my thoughts on this cuz I feel like it's been coming up a lot. But they're always like, "Why can't we retain females in the military? Like they're always getting out. Like there's a lot of people getting out like in my office." And it's just like you can't really change the fact that a lot of women want to get out to be moms or be more at home, and nothing you change about the job is going to change that. Anyways, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but all that to say, during TAPS I was a little bit frustrated and I was reading Matthew 6, which was super good. And this is where Jesus says not to store up treasures on earth where things break or fall apart, but to store up treasures in heaven, because where your treasure is, that's where your heart is too. And so I just like clung to that when I was feeling frustrated or feeling like I had to have this plan when I get out and I have to know exactly what I'm going to do, because my treasure is in that. My treasure is in the Lord and my treasure is in my family. And so that's like what I'm going to prioritize. And then everything else will fall into place. And I don't feel called to have this like big career, which I feel like is really looked down upon, and a lot of people don't understand it. Like, and times people are like, "Wait, what do you, what, huh?" But I just like feel called to be at home, and I don't know exactly what that looks like, but we're gonna figure out along the way. And I feel like it's hard, especially in the military or probably any career you have, because it's so identity based, I guess. Like you're really tied up in the military structure and being high performance and being productive. And so some people just don't get it. It feels like a lot of people at work don't get it sometimes, and it can be so hard to feel alone, which is why I'm glad I have you in this sort of realm, because it's nice to have someone who also feels the same way. Because I feel like our culture values hustle and external successes, I feel like me saying I want to stay home with my kids can feel like I'm stepping off track entirely. But like reading the Bible and reading Titus 2 and Proverbs 31, I just see the value that God places in building a home and in raising children and serving your family with intention. And that's the kind of work that I feel called to. And I don't think it's settling, because it's where I feel called, and everyone has their own callings and like what they plan on doing with their lives. But I just think we need to support people in their desires. Like there's nothing wrong with wanting to get out of the military. I feel like you'll tell someone that and they're like, oh no, like, so they think like something's wrong with that. It's like there's nothing wrong with that, and going where you feel called, and it's been an honor to serve our country, but there's nothing wrong with stepping away from that. But not to say stepping away from it isn't scary. I feel like TAPS kind of scared me in that way, because we're walking away from a steady paycheck and a predictable career, and I know that. But going back to Matthew 6, I'll read a verse when it says, I didn't write down what verse it is, but it's in Matthew 6. It says, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink or wear. Look at the birds. They don't store up food, and yet God feeds them. Aren't you worth more than they are? And I feel like this brings me so much peace, because the birds aren't in a TAPS course. They're not updating their LinkedIn or getting their LinkedIn headshots or comparing different benefits packages, but God still takes care of them. And if He provides for them, He's going to provide for us too. And like I said, I don't know what the future looks like, but I know who holds it, and that is enough. So if you're similar to us and you feeling like stepping away from a career or in the military or just having any big crazy life shift, you don't have to have it all figured out, and your identity isn't in your title, it's not in your paycheck, and your future doesn't have to look like anyone else's to be meaningful. And what matters is that you're following God's lead, even if it's settling into something more quiet and unseen. I feel like I've been really desiring to settle into the quiet and the slower pace of life. And I think He sees you and He'll provide for you. And there's nothing more secure than being in step with Him, like you were talking about, and walking alongside Him. And He's going to light your path for the next step that you're going to take. You might not know the whole outcome, but if you're walking with Him, like He will provide, and everything is going to be okay. So there's no point in being stressed about it. And I'm speaking to myself here, but thanks for sharing all the other stuff, Erin, and all the resources, as I kind of went out on a tangent about taps and all exciting stuff. But yeah, I didn't really know what I was going to say in today's episode. So I don't know if any of it made sense, but
No, it did. And I think that one of the other things that's cool about walking with the Lord is that it's not a one size fits all, and we are all created very differently. Like I'm not the same as you, even though we both want to pursue the same things. I'm not the same as my husband, and there's differences obviously between men and women that I could go into and talk about for hours, but also just the differences between different types of women. And one thing I've been just realizing recently is that my bandwidth and my capacity could simply be different than others, and I don't want the fact that I'm getting out to ever seem like a prideful thing. Like I'm getting out to do the better thing, and it's simply because I don't know. I'm really tired. I, I, I don't, I want to serve my family well. And even just like the state of our house right now, I'm just like looking at my living room, and
yeah.
it's a mess. And I don't want to live in that chaos. I want to be able to have time, for my husband, have time for my family, and I just don't right now. And so, I wanted to share, we got a comment on one of our podcast episodes. And it said, this is from, I think, 2 episodes ago. But it says, this episode was fire. It totally met me where I was at. I needed the reminder to actively surrender, and I'm excited to jump back into the word. In the future, I would love to hear from a guest who has been a mother in the military and hear how she balanced motherhood while working full time, or even just to hear more specifics about how Erin does both. And so we'll go into this like in future episodes for sure. And I do want to find guests who have been a mother in the military and how they balanced both. I think it's actually not hard. Like I'll be able to do it. Like we have enough connections where we'll be able to find those women. But a lot of the moms that I do know who were in decided to get out, and a majority of the moms I know were never in the military. And so I just want the person who wrote this comment to know that we will definitely pursue that, because I think it's important to share both perspectives and to hear just people's stories beyond just me and Liz. That's why we like to have guests on. But for me in this season, I don't. She said that she would love to hear more specifics about how I do both, and the answer is I do it with a lot of help. I don't think I could. I would have to do it just because of my contract and everything. But my son, if I didn't have help from my in-laws who are really close by, and then other community from church that we have nearby, my son would have to be in daycare, which would not be ideal for me. He's not right now. He's just with family and family friends, which is amazing. I get help cleaning my house every other month. I have a lady come clean my house every other month. Like my mother-in-law cooks for us when she's here. I am weak. Like I cannot do it. That's the truth. Like I want to go into more specifics about like how exactly I'm managing right now, because it's not glorious. It's actually like very humbling. Like I don't do it all. I can't do it all. I don't know how people do. If you have the secret, like I would love to know.
Yeah.
And that's why I do want to bring on some more people who have done both, because I think that there are just nuances in how we're created too, and how much we can absorb ourselves, and how much physical energy we have in different seasons of life too. And motherhood will test and challenge that, and it'll be fluctuating as I continue to have more kids and everything. So I just want you to know that we'll do our best to bring on more guests, but also that I'm looking for the answers myself too in this season. So
Yeah, I could barely do it, and I don't have any kids right now, and I feel like I could barely do it. So that's why I'm like, if I had kids, there is no way. And I used to think I could operate at like a super high capacity and be able to do it all, but lately, the past like couple years, I've just been needing a
yeah,
slower pace.
things change
Yeah.
as we get older, for one, but also as we realize like I don't want the things that I'm doing to be surface level. Like I want to be able to dive deep into whatever I'm reading. I want to have time to sit and read a book.
Hmm.
Like I don't have that time right now. I want right now, like my husband and I are really trying to prioritize our marriage, because in this busy season it's a challenge. Like when we're both just taking care of Weston and working, we barely see each other with the new schedule I'm on. So I don't have time for that. So I don't know. There's a lot of other things I don't have time for. So yeah, it's just a very interesting conversation that I'm excited to dive into more in the future. And we'll definitely do our best to hear to bring on more guests to have different perspectives. And if you are a woman who has either worked in the military or in another high pace career, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your comments. And like we did today, we will read your reviews, read your comments on the podcast. And we do want it to be like a two-way conversation. We want to hear from our audience. So thank you to the person who did leave this comment, and we're excited to see more as they roll in.
Yeah, no, leave your comments down below, anything, whether it's what you want to see or just something fun, because I enjoy reading them. I'm like, oh, people listen, that's funny. So, yeah, don't be afraid to engage. It reminds us of why we're doing this and putting so much work into this, even when life is crazy.
Yeah. Yep. So I'll leave the links to the resources I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast down below, as well as our Instagram if you want to reach out to us there. We'd love to hear from you and love for you to follow along as we continue this podcast and this new journey. With that, we're Erin and Liz, helping you mind your mission.